The mirror was shattered, but the face staring back at me smiled a smile I couldn't make, no matter how hard I tried. My name's Riley, and I was 16 when I decided to sneak into the old Crestwood Psychiatric Hospital with my friend Alex. It was the summer of 2024, and Crestwood had been abandoned for decades, ever since a patient riot left the place in ruins. The stories about it were wild whispers of experiments gone wrong, patients who never left, shadows that moved on their own. Alex and I didn't buy the ghost talk. We just wanted some cool photos for our socials and a story to brag about. We had no idea what we were walking into. It was just past 11 p.m. when we climbed through a broken window on the ground floor. The air inside was heavy, thick with the smell of damp plaster and something sour, like old medicine. My flashlight beam danced across the lobby, catching faded murals of smiling families, now peeling and stained. The silence was suffocating, broken only by the crunch of glass under our sneakers and the occasional groan of the Building S bones. Alex was all bravado, snapping pics with his phone, but I felt it a prickling on my neck, like someone was watching from the dark. We headed for the psychiatric wing, up a stairwell littered with debris. The steps creaked under our weight, and the air grew colder with every floor. By the time we reached the 3rd floor, my breath was visible in the flashlight's glow. The hallway was a maze of locked doors and rusted gurneys, their wheels frozen in place. Graffiti covered the walls, but some of it looked wrong, like words scratched in desperation rather than spray-painted. They see you, one read. I told myself it was just vandalism, but my stomach twisted. We found a room at the end of the hall, its door hanging off its hinges. Inside was a mess of overturned chairs, scattered papers, and a cracked mirror bolted to the wall. The mirror was big, its surface fractured into a spiderweb of shards, but still reflective. Alex dared me to look into it, joking about seeing a ghost. I rolled my eyes, but stepped closer, my flashlight shaking in my hand. The cold was intense now, seeping into my bones, and the air felt thick, like it was pressing against me. I looked into the mirror, and at first, it was just me pale, nervous, my hoodie bunched around my shoulders. But then, something shifted. My reflection moved the same way I did, tilting its head when I tilted mine, raising a hand when I did. But it was smiling a wide, unnatural grin that stretched too far, showing too many teeth. I wasn't smiling. I tried to force one to match it, but my lips wouldn't move that way. My heart pounded as I stepped back, but the reflection stayed put, still grinning, still mimicking my every move. "Alex," I whispered, my voice barely audible. He was behind me, messing with his phone, oblivious. The reflection's eyes locked onto mine, and they weren't right too dark, too deep, like holes that went on forever. I waved my hand, and it waved back, but its fingers seemed longer, curling unnaturally. The room felt smaller, the walls closing in, and a low hum started, like static from an old TV, coming from the mirror itself. I grabbed Alex's arm, pulling him toward the door. "We need to go," I said, my voice shaking. He looked at the mirror, and his face went white. "What the hell is that?" he stammered. His reflection was there too, mimicking him perfectly, except for that same eerie smile. The hum grew louder, and then we heard it, a faint whisper, like a dozen voices overlapping, saying our names. Riley, Alex. It wasn't coming from the room, it was coming from the mirror. We ran, our flashlights bouncing wildly. The hallway seemed longer now, the doors we'd passed slamming shut one by one behind us. The whispers followed, growing into a chorus, sharp and insistent. My flashlight flickered, and in the split-second darkness, I swore I saw that smiling face in the shadows, not in a mirror, but standing at the end of the hall. We hit the stairwell, tripping over debris, the whispers chasing us down every step. The air was so cold it burned my lungs, and the smell of medicine was overwhelming, like it was seeping from the walls. We didn't stop until we were outside, collapsing in the overgrown parking lot. The hospital loomed behind us, its windows like empty eyes. Alex's phone was dead, all his photos gone. I tried to laugh it off, to say it was just our imaginations. But then I saw my reflection in the car window. It was me, but for a second, that smile flickered across my face, a smile I didn't make. I haven't gone near Crestwood since. I avoid mirrors now, especially at night. Sometimes, when it's quiet, I hear that hum, faint but unmistakable, and I feel that same cold, like something's standing just behind me, waiting for me to look. The gurney's wheels screeched in the empty hospital, rolling closer, until they stopped silent and heavy just beyond our locked door. My name's Sarah, and I've always been fascinated by abandoned places, the stories they hold in their crumbling walls. Last year, my film crew me, my director Jake, and our sound guy, Marcus got permission to shoot a documentary in St. Jude's Hospital. A derelict shell closed since the late 90s after a string of unexplained patient deaths. The plan was simple: capture the eerie atmosphere, interview a few locals about the old rumors, and wrap by midnight. We didn't expect to become part of the story. We arrived just after dusk, the hospital's silhouette stark against the fading light. Inside, the air was thick with dust, the smell of mold, an old antiseptic, clinging to everything. Our footsteps echoed in the cavernous lobby, where shattered glass crunched underfoot and faded signs hung crooked on the walls. The place felt wrong, like it was watching us. Jake, always the optimist, brushed it off, saying it was perfect for the vibe we wanted. Marcus was quieter, his eyes darting to the shadows as he set up the mix. We started filming on the second floor, where the surgical ward had been. The hallways were narrow, lined with rusted equipment and overturned chairs. Our lights cast long shadows, making the peeling paint look like claw marks. The cold was relentless, seeping through my jacket and every sound our voices. The hum of the camera felt swallowed by the silence. We were setting up a shot in an old operating room when we first heard it. A faint, rhythmic squeak, like wheels rolling on linoleum, coming from the hallway. We froze. Marcus lowered his boom mic, his face pale. "That's not us, right?" he whispered. Jake shook his head, motioning for us to stay quiet. The sound grew louder, closer, the unmistakable screech of a gurney's wheels, slow and deliberate. It was coming from the direction of the elevator, which hadn't worked in decades. My heart pounded as I gripped the camera, its lens pointed at the doorway. The squeaking stopped, replaced by a heavy silence that pressed against my chest. Jake, ever the skeptic, grabbed a flashlight and stepped toward the door. "Probably just a rat or something," he said, but his voice wavered. Marcus and I followed, our lights sweeping the hallway. It was empty, no gurney, no tracks in the dust, nothing. But the air felt colder, thicker, like we'd disturbed something. We laughed it off, blaming the acoustics, and moved to the next room, a former patient ward. The vibe was off, though. Marcus kept checking over his shoulder, and I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. An hour later, we were filming in a recovery room, its windows boarded up when it happened again. The squeaking started, louder this time, faster, like someone was pushing a gurney at a run. It came from the hallway we'd just left, the wheels shrieking against the floor. I swung the camera towards the door, my hands shaking. The sound was so close now, maybe 10 feet away, but the hallway was pitch black beyond our lights. Then a new sounder, low, guttural moan, like someone in pain, rising into a scream that made my blood run cold. It wasn't human, not quite, but it was close enough to twist my stomach. Marcus dropped his mic, backing against the wall. "We need to go," he hissed. Jake nodded, his bravado gone. We grabbed our gear and bolted for the stairwell. The gurneys squeaked, chasing us, the scream rising and falling like a siren. It stopped abruptly as we reached the door, but when we tried the handle, it wouldn't budge. The door was locked, though we'd left it propped open. Panic set in. The squeaking started again, slower now, deliberate, coming from just outside. Something heavy thudded against the door, once, twice, like a gurney ramming it. I don't know how we got the door open. Jake says he kicked it, but I don't remember. We stumbled into the stairwell, the scream echoing behind us, louder, closer. We didn't stop running until we were outside, the hospital looming like a predator in the dark. In the car, Marcus played back the audio from his mic, over our footsteps and panting. There it was, the gurney's squeak, the scream, and something else, a whisper, faint but clear, saying, "Stay with us." We never finished the documentary. I tried researching St. Jude's later, digging through old records. There was a mention of a patient, a John Doe, who died on a gurney during a botched transfer, his screams ignored by overworked staff. The hospital closed soon after. I don't know what we heard that night, but sometimes when I'm editing footage late, I hear that squeak again, faint, like wheels rolling just out of sight. I check the locks twice now, but it doesn't help. The heart monitor's steady beep echoed through the empty hospital. But what chilled me most was the name on the chart, my own. My name's Daniel, and I've been a night security guard for years, working gigs nobody else wants. Last fall, I took a job at St. Agnes Hospital, a crumbling relic shuttered since the early 2000s. After a scandal involving missing patients, the place was slated for demolition, and my job was to patrol the grounds, make sure no kids or urban explorers broke in, and report anything unusual. The pay was decent, and I figured an empty building would be easy money. I didn't know how wrong I'd be. My first shift started at 10 p.m. The hospital loomed against the night sky, its windows dark, some boarded, others cracked like broken teeth. The air inside was stale, heavy with dust and the faint tang of antiseptic that lingered like a ghost. My boots echoed on the chipped linoleum as I swept my flashlight across the lobby, illuminating overturned chairs and faded signs pointing towards long abandoned. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the occasional drip of a leaking pipe or the creak of the building settling. I told myself it was just a job, but my skin prickled every time I turned a corner. The routine was simple. Check each floor, lock any open doors, and log anything out of place. The first 2 floors were uneventful, just peeling paint and scattered papers. But the 3rd floor felt different. The air was colder, heavier, like stepping into a freezer. My flashlight flickered as I entered the main corridor, lined with doors to patient rooms, their numbers barely legible. Halfway down, I froze. A faint, rhythmic beep pierced the silence, steady and mechanical, like a heart monitor. It was coming from room 312, a door slightly ajar at the end of the hall. My stomach churned. There was no power in the building, hadn't been for decades. I gripped my flashlight tighter, its beam trembling as I approached. The beeping grew louder, more insistent, each pulse sensing with my own heartbeat. I told myself it was a prank, maybe kids messing around, but the hospital was locked tight, and I hadn't seen a soul. I pushed the door open, wincing as it scraped against the floor. The room was small, bare except for a rusted bed frame and a dusty nightstand. On the wall, an old heart monitor sat silent, its screen dark, its cord severed and dangling like a cut vein. Yet the beeping continued, echoing from nowhere and everywhere. I swept my flashlight around, my breath catching in my throat. The beam caught something on the nightstand, a patient chart, yellowed and curled at the edges. My hands shook as I picked it up, dust falling like snow. The name at the top stopped me cold, Daniel James Harper. My full name, written in faded ink. Below it, a date, October 17th, 1998. I was 10 years old then, nowhere near this place. The chart listed symptoms: fever, disorientation, unresponsive to treatment, and a final note: patient transferred to isolation. My mouth went dry. This had to be a coincidence, but the beeping was louder now, faster, like it was reacting to me. I backed out of the room, the chart clutched in my hand. The hallway seemed longer, the shadows deeper. Then I heard it a soft shuffle, like bare feet on linoleum, coming from behind me. I spun around, my flashlight cutting through the dark, but the corridor was empty. The air grew colder, my breath visible in the beam. The shuffling came again, closer, deliberate, like someone was pacing just out of sight. I called out, my voice cracking. "Who's there?" No answer. just the relentless beeping, now so loud it felt like it was inside my skull. I bolted for the stairwell, the chart still in my hand. The shuffling followed, faster now, keeping pace. My flashlight flickered again, plunging me into darkness for a split second before snapping back on. In that moment, I swore I saw a figure at the end of the hall, gaunt, its head tilted at an unnatural angle. I didn't look back. I took the stairs 2 at a time, my heart pounding, the beeping and shuffling chasing me down every step. When I reached the lobby, the sounds stopped, like a switch had been flipped. The silence was worse, heavy with the weight of something watching. I didn't finish my rounds that night. I locked the front door and sat in my car until dawn. The chart on the passenger seat. I read it over and over, trying to make sense of it. There was no record of a Daniel Harper ever being a patient at St. Agnes, not in any database I could find. But a week later, I started getting sick fever headaches, moments where I'd zone out and lose time. My girlfriend said I'd mumble in my sleep, words like isolation and stay. I quit the job, burned the chart, and moved out of town. The symptoms faded, but sometimes, late at night, I hear it a faint, rhythmic beep, like a heart monitor in the distance, calling me back. In the dead of night, we thought the abandoned hospital was empty, but the flickering light in Ward 13 and the footsteps we couldn't TC told us we weren't T alone. My name's Ethan, and I've always been drawn to places people leave behind. There's something about abandoned buildings, their silence, their decay that feels like stepping into a frozen moment of time. Last summer, my friends Mia, Lucas, and I decided to explore St. Agnes Hospital, a crumbling relic on the edge of town. It had been shut down for 20 years, left to rot after a fire-gutted part of the East Wing. The rumors about it were endless. Botched surgeries, patients who vanished, brass staff who swore they heard cries long after the last bed was wheeled out. We didn't believe the stories. We just wanted the thrill. It was just past midnight when we slipped through a shattered window, our flashlights cutting through the dark. The air inside was heavy, thick with the smell of mildew and something metallic like old blood. Dust hung in the beams of our lights, swirling as we moved. The lobby was a mess of overturned chairs, peeling wallpaper, and a reception desk covered in graffiti. Our footsteps echoed on the cracked tiles, too loud in the stillness. Mia whispered that it felt like the building was holding its breath, and we laughed, but it was a nervous kind of laugh. We'd planned to hit the main wards, maybe find some old medical equipment for photos. Lucas, always the bold one, suggested we check the upper floors. The stairwell was pitch black, the steps sagging under our weight. Every creak made my heart jump, but I told myself it was just the building settling. We reached the 3rd floor, where a faded sign read, Ward 13, restricted. The door was boarded up, but the planks were loose, practically begging us to pry them off. Lucas didn't hesitate, and soon inside. The hallway was long and narrow, lined with doors to patient rooms. Most of the ceiling tiles were gone, exposing rusted pipes and dangling wires. Our flashlights barely reached the end of the corridor. where a single fluorescent light flickered, buzzing like a dying insect. It was strange. There shouldn't have been power in a place like this. Mia pointed it out, her voice low. "Why is that light on?" she asked. Lucas shrugged, but I could see his grip tighten on his flashlight. We moved closer, the buzzing growing louder, almost rhythmic like a heartbeat. Then we heard it. Faint footsteps, slow and deliberate, coming from the far end of the hall. They weren't ours too heavy, too uneven. I swung my flashlight, expecting to see someone, but the beam showed nothing but peeling paint and shadows. The footsteps stopped, then started again, closer now. My stomach twisted. "Guys," I whispered, "we should go." But Lucas, stubborn as ever, wanted to see what was under that flickering light. He led the way, and we followed. Our breaths shuddered. The air grew colder the closer we got, a damp chill that seeped into my bones. But the light was directly above a rusted gun. Its straps frayed but still buckled, as if waiting for someone. Scattered on the floor were yellowed paper's patient records, smeared with ink. I picked one up, my hands shaking. The name was unreadable, but the words sedation, failure, and restrained stood out. The footsteps came again, faster this time, like someone dragging their feet. They were right behind us now, but when we turned, the hallway was empty. Mia grabbed my arm, her nails digging in. "Ethan, something's here," she hissed. I felt it to her pressure, like eyes watching from the dark. The light above us flickered faster, the buzzing so loud it hurt my ears. Then it went out, plunging us into darkness. Lucas swore, fumbling with his flashlight, but it wouldn't turn on. Mine flickered and died too. Only Mia's worked, its weak beam trembling in her hands. The footsteps were everywhere now, circling us, scraping against the tiles. I could hear breathing not, ours shallow and ragged, like it was coming from the walls. "Run," I said, my voice barely a whisper. We stumbled back toward the door, but it slammed shut before we could reach it, the sound echoing like a gunshot. Panic took over. Mia was sobbing. Lucas was shouting, but I couldn't move. The air felt thick, like it was pressing down on me. Then, from the dark, a voice whispered my name, low, guttural, not human. It came from the direction of the gurney. Mia's flashlight caught something. A shadow, tall and warped, standing where the light had been. It didn't move, but I felt its gaze, heavy and wrong. We threw ourselves at the door, splintering the boards in our desperation. The footsteps chased us, growing louder, faster, until we tumbled into the stairwell. We didn't stop running until we were outside, the hospital looming behind us like a predator. In the car, Mia checked her phone. She'd been recording audio for our adventure. When she played it back, there was nothing but static. And then, clear as day, my name, spoken in that same guttural voice. We never went back. I tried researching Ward 13 later, but the records were vague, mentioning only a quarantine breach before the hospital closed. Sometimes, at night, I hear that buzzing sound, like a fluorescent light about to die. And sometimes, when I'm alone, I swear I hear footsteps, slow and deliberate, coming from just out of sight.